Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a coach and mentor that educates, supports, and inspires teens, our next generation of leaders, none other than Mr. Antwaun Thompson.
Yes, indeed. How are you, Daniel?
I'm fabulous, fabulous, Mr. Antoine. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually, the kids call me Coach T. So I go by Coach T. This is my 40th year of coaching and mentoring, coaching basketball and mentoring young men and women. I started in 1985 and also am the founder and executive director of a youth coaching and mentoring nonprofit, which is called JLT Fieldhouse, and it's named after my late father. I served in the United States Marine Corps for 30 years, and unfortunately, he passed away in 1996 to leukemia. So I wanted to carry on his legacy, and I do that by um, carrying forward what he taught my brothers and I growing up, and that is to do what you can for other people without any expectation of reward. And so I continue to do that through the sport of basketball, teaching life skills about responsibility, accountability, character building, leadership, and so many other areas.
And thank you so much for your legacy to the world. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Well, let's talk about the three keys to success: simplicity, attitude, and effort. So tell us, was what was the insight or experience that led you to distill success down to the specific components, and why the acronym
Uh,
SEA?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Daniel, really for all 40 of my years of coaching, I've always focused on those three components, keeping the process simple because young people deal with so many extra curricular things in their lives, and uh, they complicate things unnecessarily without not any fault of their own, but simplifying the process makes them more susceptible to success. And then the effort is all about putting forth maximum effort. You know, you're not going to always succeed, but as long as you know you put forth the effort, you've made progress and you've made some success. And the attitude to me is the most important because you can't keep things simple and you can't put forth maximum effort if you don't have the right attitude. Life is going to throw us all curves, and it has for myself. I'm sure it has for you and some of your listeners. But it's how you respond to those adversities, and your attitude determines how you react to those. And for the kids that I work with, this is exactly what we talk about: simplicity, effort, and attitude. And it's the key to success I've had at every level that I've coached basketball. And it is one that kids buy into early because I also explain to them why. I don't just say simplicity, effort, and attitude. We practice it on a daily basis. And I'll also like to explain to them. So it's important that they understand what they're learning instead of just throwing things in front of them, and explaining the simplicity, effort, and attitude of not just basketball but life. It makes it so much easier for them to understand.
Interesting, Coach T. And tell us, SEA suggests these three keys are system, not just a list. How does a weakness in one area directly cripple the other two of your SEA?
I missed the first part of your question, Daniel.
SEA suggests that these three keys are system, not just a list. How
Right.
does a weakness in one area directly cripple the other of two?
Yeah. So a perfect example that would be communication because it's one of the biggest ones that I spend the most time focusing on. We'll just say the simplicity is one area kids have a weakness, but it's implementing the effort to simplify that communication. An example I can give you is, a kid wants to go and do something. Well, instead of asking in a way that lets the parent know that they know it's important, but they also know it may be something that concerns the parent. It's how they convey their interest in doing something. So the communication is to simplify that. Instead of going, hey, I want to go to this party, and the parents going to be, no, you can't go, because first thing parents hear is party, and they think the obvious, there's going to be, alcohol or drugs or whatever. And in a different way, the kids could apply the effort of simplifying the questioning and clarifying what they mean. And this is a part that's really important. I know that you're concerned about alcohol or drugs, but um, uh, the parents are going to be there, their chaperones there, and they've forbidden any alcohol or drugs to be there. That's the kids simplifying something that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to before, but applying the effort, meaning taking the time to understand the parent's perspective and then communicating it to them in a way that they understand. And also, it builds respect between that parent and that child, because now the parents are like, hey, you're showing responsibility as well as accountability by taking the time thinking through it before you ask. So that's just the best example I can give you of that.
Interesting indeed. And is there a sequential importance to SEA? Must one always start with strategy followed by execution, fueled by attitude? Is that the one? Is that the cycle?
Is there a particular order you mean of this?
Yes. Yes.
No, no, no. This is definitely not a cookie cutter like yeah, you do this, you do that. Because every child, Daniel, that I work with, every child has different learns differently. Some are auditory, some are visual learners, and then others are like these physical learners. So I adapt the process based on how they learn and how I connect with them. Some of those I can be very direct with and how to apply these. Others I actually have to go step by step with them. And that really brings up another point that's really important too, Daniel, is with any child, and parents know this too. But when you're working with kids, you have to understand who they are and how they do things. But you also have to be willing to listen without judging. And that's how I start with this whole system and method of simplicity, effort, and attitude. It's about listening and then assessing and then determining which to use. Like we use all three, but it's a matter of where the emphasis starts with. And I hope that answers your question.
Coach C, how do you differentiate true strategy for a simple plan or a list of goals? What are the key components of a strategy that actually works?
What's the key strategies?
Yes.
Well, I've kind of just
Just
really outlined those. I mean, those are my strategies. They start with assessment, meaning there's listening and non-judgmental approach. That's the first step, and then the second step is establishing that rapport with the child. Meaning, again, understanding they may not be a very outgoing person, so I got to be a little bit more reserved in my approach versus another kid that maybe matches my outgoing personality, and I can be more direct and be myself. So that's strategy number two: listening, not being judgmental, and then establishing a rapport. Because once I establish a rapport, the teaching part of the method of simplicity, effort, and attitude is much easier. And then it's also rewarding each one of those steps that's accomplished.
Coach T, how does a clearly defined purpose act as a foundation of a resilient strategy, especially when obstacles arise?
What you're talking about, resilience?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So resilience would refer primarily to the effort part of it, Daniel. And case in point, like I had mentioned before, the ebbs and flows of life, there's highs and there's lows. Well, that's where resilience comes in. It's a matter of, like I always tell kids, it's not what you're capable of, it's what you're willing to do to succeed. So when they face those areas where they're lacking resilience, the first thing to do is to question what is it that you want to achieve. So the foundation has to be established that, hey, I don't want to stay here, I want to move forward. Well, that means you're willing to do or willing to take that next step to overcome and become more resilient. And there's a couple of stories of resilience that I could tell you about, but and how those were implemented. But that's really the heart of it. But effort really ties directly to resilience.
Coach C, how do you formulate effective strategy when the market or life is full of uncertainty and you have incomplete information?
Well, first and foremost, you have to focus on what you can control. Media, social media, and media in general today has a tendency to pull us in so many different directions, and ultimately pulling our emotions into so many different directions. And then we lose sight of who we are. One of the things that we focus a lot on is telling kids focus on what you can control. Number one, you're not an adult that's dealing directly with some of the impacts or some of the things that are going on, but indirectly they affect you because they affect your household. Well, one of the other things is how can you help control some of that anxiety that may be going on in your house? This is where compassion and understanding and going back to communication, asking questions. One of the things that a lot of kids are afraid to do is ask questions, and asking questions is a good way to not only improve the relationships, but also builds that level of accountability and that level of responsibility that young people are afraid to take on, and they're afraid to take on it because they're not allowed to take on it because they're, I hate to use the term, but they're being helicopter parented in some areas because parents are overprotective, and that's hurting kids in the long run.
What is the single most common mistake you see people or businesses make in the strategy phase that set them up for a failure down the line?
No, that was an easy one, Daniel. You must treat all of your employees as internal customers, meaning you treat your internal customers just like you do your external. Your business grows because people keep coming back. Why do they keep coming back? Because they like the product or the service that you provide. Why do they like the product or the service that you provide? Because they like the way it's given to them. Well, you got to treat the people that give that service the same as the people that receive it so that you ensure that that cycle continues. And many businesses fail in that because they're only looking at their bottom line, and they put pressure on the frontline employees to, hey, keep producing so that we can make money. Well, if you're not turning around and giving back the praise, not always monetarily, but just recognizing the success of your frontline, your internal employees, then your business over time suffers. I've seen it happen many times.
Coach D, why is it execution the stage where so many great strategies? And what is the key to bring the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it?
You're going to think I'm crazy, but I keep talking about it. It's about communication. You have to understand where the gap is. So how do you know where the gap is if you don't communicate? You have educators and you have people in positions of authority dictating what the next generation of leaders should do without inquiring with them what they want to do. Case in point, kids are going to school for 12 years and they graduate to go to college. And some of the kids I work with that are in college, they spend the first couple of years not knowing what they want to do, but they're being told, well, this is what you should do. And they start studying things that they don't want to do. Why? Because nobody asked them, what is of interest to you? Maybe it wasn't to even go to college. Maybe it was go to trade school to learn a trade. Maybe it was to become an online influencer or whatever it may be. But if we don't ask questions, we don't close the gap. If we just make assumptions, we continue the cycle that has continuously grown on. I'll pose it to you this way, Daniel. I'll ask you a question, and all you got to do is say yes or no. Has the automobile evolved since it was created?
Yes,
Okay. Has music evolved over the years?
yes,
Has technology evolved over the years?
yes,
Has our educational system evolved over the years?
no.
There you go. So there's your answer. It starts with the education, but in order to educate, we have to involve kids in there. If you saw my site, one of the things that I do is I empower kids to take ownership of their own success. That means I empower them to ask questions. If they don't like it, ask questions so people understand who they are, what they are, and why they are.
Coach T, how does the principle of a small wins or atomic habits fuel the execution engine and prevent burnout in a long term goal?
I caught the last part about the having the burnout phase. But what was the first part of the question?
So let's talk about the momentum of small wins. How does the principle of small wins or atomic habits
Yes.
fuel the execution engine and prevent burnout on a long-term goal?
Yeah. You got to look at your big picture. It's like anything else. You ultimately want to be, well, like for me, when I started out, when I started coaching, I wanted to be a Division I college coach. That was my big vision. Well, I'm not going to go from a little league basketball coach to a Division I coach. I have to go through the process. So I started coaching high school, coach AAU, and I coached in college for a couple of years. After that college experience, it was understood those little wins. I started gaining momentum to my ultimate goal. But when I got to the college level, I realized I don't want to be a Division I coach. I'm having too much fun and I'm making too much impact where I am with younger kids. So you have to be willing to make changes as you go to prevent burnout. Because I know had I become a Division I coach, the pressures of winning would have burned me out really quick. But here I am in my 40th year, still coaching high school basketball and loving it like it's my first year coaching.
Very well said, Miss Coach T. Very well said. So during execution, how do you know when to stay the course versus when to pivot your strategy based on feedback on changing conditions?
One of the things that I'll go back to your last question. You're talking about the burnout phase. Well, those little wins. If those little wins don't give you the same satisfaction as that first step or that second step, and you feel like you're just kind of going through the motions and you're creating another small win, you have to reevaluate where you want to go. One of the other things that's really important too is when you establish what you want to do, you have to put those goals down on paper. You just can't wing it, because as you go, those goals are going to change over time. And if you keep referring to those goals as you progress, you'll say, "Hey, you know what? This is not the goal I want to have. I need to revise these goals." If you're revising your goals as you progress, you're going to ultimately reach where you want to be and not end up where you don't want to be.
Coach T, as a mentor and educates, supports, and inspire teams, what are your short term and long term goals?
What are mine?
Yes, please.
I'm living them, and that's not a cliche or anything like that. I'm living my dream.
Good luck to your goals, Coach T, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Oh, it's very simple. Your attitude almost always determines your altitude in life. And the other is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yes, indeed. Good job. And thank you for that advice. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Absolutely. My coaching um, favorite is former University of North Carolina coach Dean Smith, who's a legend in the game. He wrote a book called A Coach's Life. And I truly emulate my coaching style after him, where he puts the person before the player, teaching life skills through the sport. And some of the stories in there will blew me away because you would think a legendary coach like that is as human as you and I. But that's definitely a good read and one that I think a lot of people would get a lot from.
Well, thank you for that recommended book, Coach AT. And can you walk us through how applying the SEA framework would look in a real world high pressure scenario?
Absolutely. So, any business that's going through any adversity, be it financial, HR, whatever it may be, the simplistic approach is assessment. That would be the first thing is assessment, assessing your situation and coming up with plan A, B, or C. And the effort part of it is implementing the most sought out or the most effective resolution to that and applying it in a way that you're sure and positive of yourself, not that you're winging it, but you've done the research and go, hey, we're going to apply this. We're going to put 100% behind this resolution to our issues. And then the third is the attitude, the way that you implement any type of strategy that where you're trying to change things. It's really important that everybody involved with it has the same attitude. Leadership naturally has an approach, has an understanding that from frontline employees that they're always hard and only looking at the bottom line. But you treat your frontliners like humans, and like they're just as important as the CEO. Then they're going to be more receptive if you treat them as equals as opposed to treating them as though they're inferior. So that's about the attitude approach. So assessing is the simplicity, applying the resolution with maximum effort with the goal intent that it's going to work. But most importantly, in order for that to keep it simple, apply that effort, the attitude in which you explain it and share it must be positive from both sides.
Positive for both sides for sure. For or if someone is overwhelmed and can only focus on improving one of the three keys initially, which one or which would have the greatest ripple effect and why?
I'm going to go to attitude. Your attitude is going to definitely, because number one, if you don't have a positive attitude, there's no way you're going to put forth any effort because your attitude's not right. You're not going to be in the right frame of mind to simplify whatever the issue is if your attitude is not right. If you establish from the beginning, you know what, this is going to be tough, but I got to keep a positive attitude. Your attitude, a negative attitude lasts on the average, when you think about it, less than 20 seconds. So you give yourself 20 seconds to assess the situation and then go, okay, either I'm going to stay this way or I'm going to make a change. Well, most people are going to want to make a change. So attitude is the one that I would always say to focus on. If you had to pick one of the three, if you were like, oh, I don't know where to start with your attitude, because as I said, and you're asking about parting words of encouragement, your attitude almost always determines your altitude. So it's all about attitude.
Coach T, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to consider listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season. Abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. And my Comedy 101 in second season, and my book 101, Food 101 in its fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in fourth season, as well as my movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Coach T, what is the most compelling story in or case study you have seen where I'm applying the SEA framework?
Oh boy, this is going to probably be a story. This is from a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, actually, Daniel. I've actually been telling this story, and I had to get the permission of the kids I was coaching to tell this story. We had a situation where one of the kids had broken one of our team rules. Excuse me. And I knew nothing about it. I only found out about it because two of his teammates came and told me about it. And when they told me about it, my response to them was, what are we going to do about it? And these are, by the way, these are seventh and eighth grade boys. So these are 12, 13-year-old boys. And their response was they wanted their teammate to sit in the bleachers and watch them run because of his mistake. They were willing to take his punishment. Um, so, long story short, the guys decided they also wanted to prevent him from playing in our next home game, and he would not get to dress out either, but he could sit with the team. And I asked the player if he understood what was happening. He said yes, he did, and he would have to go home and tell his parents he wasn't going to play because he had broken the team rule. So when I sum all that up, why this is such a great story to tell, Daniel. These are 12 and 13-year-old boys understand the importance of accountability and responsibility, and they were holding each other accountable. And The simplistic approach was they gave the resolution right off the bat. I didn't come up with it. They said they want to sit and watch him run. That was the simplistic part. The effort part of it was they had to run the punishment, if you will, and accept that. The attitude part, again, going back to why it's so important, after this situation occurred, it was never brought up again. It never affected the team, and we went on to have an undefeated championship season. So simplicity, effort, and attitude can truly change your life, and it also can end with positive results.
Coach T Antwaun Thompson, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom today. Please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now.
So with the Sea of Success, obviously that's going. I have my book, of course, the Sea of Success, the Ultimate Guide to Success for Preteens and Teens, and I'm also working on a second book, which is actually going to be the content provided by the kids that I've worked with over the years. The working title of that is uh, legacy letters. Yeah, that's it. I couldn't think of a second. Legacy letters, and it's basically a book about the relationship I have with kids and what our relationship as a player coach evolved into far beyond a coach and a player, and the importance of what relationships can be and how anybody that comes in your life can have a lasting impact and not necessarily the way that you initially had anticipated it. And lastly, the other project that I'm starting now is actually an online virtual academy, a virtual enrichment program. Actually, it's going to be an 8 or 12 week program, and it's going to be outside the classroom. Beyond the classroom is the title of that. And it's going to be something that's going to be an evergreen opportunity for preteens and teens as well as parents to take part of.
Yes, indeed. People, let's support Mr. Coach Steve because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering generation of leaders to come. So, Coach Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
More to come, people. See you soon.